Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Church Online. We have a testimony week for you. We have 4 testimonies from people in the life of the church. We have Barry, Anne-Marie Taylor, Jody and Ian are all sharing their testimonies with us. So you are well and truly spoiled today. So we're going to head in straight into this episode because we've got a lot for you to hear.
Well, my name's Barry Smith. Married to Julie, 3 sons, Finlay, Ethan and Aidan. Partner at Brown and McRae in Fraserburgh, office in Turriff as well for others country folk. And they've been coming along to church for the last 2 years now. Well, Julie started us off because she came along before anyone else. So I was asked just to share my hopes and fears for 2022, and I suppose they centre around 2 big changes in our life this year. The first of those ones being Finlay going away to the academy this year, and secondly is obviously big changes at my work as well. Finlay, I'm sure he'll be absolutely fine. He's a resilient character, and as I say, he'll be absolutely fine. Me, well, I'm a little bit more worried. As I say, I'm a partner at Brown and McRae, and there's big changes this year, and 2 of the senior partners or senior colleagues are retiring after, I would say, 40 years service. So that leaves me and my other partner in charge, which is very, very daunting, as you know, everyone's work rests with me, looking after all the staff, etc. It's a busy, busy time, or it will be a busy, busy time as we lose 2 senior members of staff. Big change, a lot of doubts going through my mind. You know, do I have the skill? Do I have the knowledge? Do I have the patience, experience to deal with all the staff, the clients, everything like that? But one thing that does give me a lot more comfort now is that as I enter into this new working life, I do have this additional helping hand beside me. One that I know when the phones are ringing, knee-high in unread emails, will be there to guide me, help me, and point me in the right direction and give me skills that I might not even know or understand at this stage. The reason I know this is that last Easter Sunday, I gave my life to God. Sitting in the back row of the church, I felt something I'd never felt before. I could feel a heat in my body rising from my toes to my head, and I knew something at that point was changing. I left church that afternoon, rather funny story, picked the boys up from kids' church, jumped in the car, started to drive home, and then all of a sudden decided, no, I need to go back to church. So turned the car on Stricken Road and came back to the building. I'll use my son Ethan's words here to summarise what happened next. He says, "Dad, ever since you went into that house next to the church with that Manny to tell him that God was in your body, you've changed." But don't worry, that Manny was just Dolly, and Ben was there as well. He's right though, I have changed. I now have that belief, that comfort, that faith that God will be there for me. I now have that comfort that yes, there'll be times where I maybe do something wrong, I make a mistake, or I feel that I can't cope, but I know that He'll be there to see me through these times. One thing that's always stuck out with me during these sort of hard times is some of you may know I've been in the Boys Brigade since I was 5, and there's one song there that we sing almost every parents' night, and it's, you know, in other services and things as well. And the chorus of that song always sort of sticks with me, and I think it's important, and it comes out when you do need help. And it's one that I think can give you a good lot of comfort when you maybe are struggling. And without trying to sing it, I'll maybe just say it here just now. So it's, "We have an anchor that keeps the soul steadfast and sure while the billows roll, fastened to a rock which cannot move, grounded firm and deep in the Saviour's love." Great comfort there, great comfort.
Hello, I'm Anne-Marie. I live in Inveralhy, and I would say the Promised Land. Some people would say not, but I would say it's the Promised Land. I have got 2 children, Nathan and Lisa Marie, married to John. Met John in 1991, got married in 93, and then Lisa Marie came first and then Nathan came along. And Lisa Marie is now married to Gavin, and they've been married for about 2 years. My job at the moment is an administrator in Sunnybray. I first worked in Benaya, so I started with Teen Challenge back in September 2017. I was a support worker at Benaya, and I really loved my job, but the opportunity came along at Sunnybray, and it was office work, which I've always done. So back to what I know best, and so I would be the voice at the other end of the phone if anybody phones, if guys phone or parents phone, and they just want somebody to speak to. That would be me. I would speak to them. So I didn't do sleepovers anymore. I didn't work weekends. So it's quite fine to just kind of care for your day, and you can plan things more than if I could have before. But I really enjoy what I do. I love helping others, and it's just such a rewarding job as much as it's a challenging job. The rewards outweigh it. So my early life was really good. I was brought up in a Christian home. My grandparents were Christians, and my mum and dad, so I was brought up to go to church. And I kind of complain about my upbringing at all. I was never in. I loved to go out and go out and play with my chums and things. So there was never a dull moment. Went out and played Kirby, Broughty, Kick-a-Tinny, all kind of games that we used to play. I'm sure some of you out there will ken of them, but I was also a bit of a tomboy. If somebody kens me, they'll ken that. So loved football, loved BMXs, motorbikes, you name it. If only that was going about, I would have been in the thick of it. But I'll tell you a funny story of when I was young, because I was like to think that I was very independent and I could do what I wanted. And I was a lot of mine heed once, when my mum, we always went there on holiday, and I loved going there on holiday because it was like family, friends, and everybody was there, and it was just great times. Great memories was made in that holidays. But I went to the kids meeting, mum and dad went to the adults meeting, and there was 3 different adults meetings that you could have gone to. I thought I kent where my mum and dad was, so I decided that when the kids meeting finished, I would go and find my mum and dad, because I was big enough and I would be able to do it. So I went to where I thought they were, but they weren't there. So I thought, oh, okay, so I need to go back where the kids are. I was nobody there either, because everybody was away. So I thought, oh no, I should have just stayed where I was, done what I was dealt, and they didn't. But somebody come along, seen me. By this time I was in tears because I was only little. I'm saying little, I was not little, maybe 8, 9 maybe. And they took me to another service. I was on the platform, roaring greeting, and they said, does anybody know this child? Well, of course, our friend Christine was in the audience, and she put up her hand and says, yes, I know her. So I, in my midst of running away to think I was independent, I did get reunited with Christine. So I sat with her. She was a close family friend, and I eventually found my mum and dad. But the lesson here is that sometimes we just need to stay where we're at and they think that we're big enough to go our own way. I decided to follow Jesus when I was 9, 10 years old. We was at a Dick Saunders crusade in Fraserburgh, and I remember they were speaking. It was really like heaven and hell. It would have been the preach that they were speaking about, and I remember thinking, even at a young age of 10, I wanted to go to heaven the same as all my family where they were gone. So I responded. I went to the front. My granny Barbara got the privilege of praying with me and leading me to the Lord. which as a grandparent I'm sure that's a great experience to hear. And so that was my first experience coming to the Lord. And at that young age, at 10, we went to all the kids clubs, went to all the meetings. I never ever stopped going to church. But as I come into my teens, I would say I swayed for the church, for the Christian side of things. I always went to church because I wanted to still go for mum and dad and different things. So I would have said I was about one foot in, one foot out through my teens. It never stopped me coming to youth or anything, because I loved coming to youth, even though I maybe wasn't living that life. I was very honest if I had done anything wrong and I was supposed to be participating in a youth thing on a Sunday night. I would have said to the youth leader, look, I'm really sorry, but I can't do it tonight. So I never ever hid what I did. I'm not proud of what I did, but I never hid it. I was very honest. And then I met John at the youth, so it was where my family life started. Once I had the kids, I went to Cairnbulloch and then I went to Fraserburgh AOG. So I've been in AOG Central since Lisa Marie was 4, which is 23 years I've been there. So a great church, I'll just love it, and the family, with the church family at a heavier is just fantastic. So for that teenagers and gone to AOG, it has totally changed how I am as a Christian. And it also, I got baptised the same year that I started going there. So the journey was just different. I was then involved in kids ministry. Lisa wanted me to start doing like teachings for the stage, and there was things that I was doing that they were not bad, but they were not right in my mind for teaching. So I took a stance that I says, if I want to do the Lord's work, then I need to be living my life right. I didn't feel that I could teach kids right for wrong if I was doing wrong. So that was another shift in my Christian life. And then, of course, you just get closer to the Lord, don't you? Because you've got to feed into His Word to be able to teach the kids right and do your stories or do fun activities with games and things. And I'm always up for a laugh, so I love that kind of side of things. So my Christian walk has massively changed since I moved to Fraserburgh and been involved in a kids ministry. Nathan had fell ill March 2017, and that was a really, really difficult time in my life, and it definitely was a challenge because you never want to see your own family be ill, and how ill he was. We had no answers to what it was at the beginning, and we had a few hospital trips, operations and things, and it was a tough time, but I learned in that time to lean in to God more, that I needed to trust Him in it. But I had good family and I had good friends that was always there. They probably didn't care, but they always sent a message or a phone call at the right time. And I've got to say that my mum and dad was amazing. They helped when we needed it. And they were always there. And I'd care if I could have managed without them. But I have to say that the Lord was my biggest strength in that time. And the verse that I had during that time was Psalm 46, verse 10, I think it is, be still and know that I am God, because I had to take that still time in His presence, because it was an infection that Nathan had, and it went on for years and years. He had his last operation in lockdown. They found a piece of dead bone, and he's never had an infection since. I've prayed for the infection to go. We've prayed for him just to get at healing, and he's back playing football. He's back to normal, which I'm ever so grateful for and ever so thankful for. But I do believe that the Lord puts you through things for a reason. Sometimes we do not understand it here and now, but I believe it brought me closer to Him. So in the midst of that challenge and in the midst of everything else that was going on, my walk with the Lord definitely became closer. On the outside, I would have looked at Abdi like I had it all together, that I was fine. But in the inside, I was struggling, I was crumbling, and I knew that I had to lean into God. And I definitely did that in that time. I've learned quite a lot about myself, I suppose. Since becoming a Christian, I have learned that you've got to lean into God, and God's ways are greater than our ways. So I have learned that I maybe need to have like maybe more of a boldness about my faith. Never be ashamed. I've never ever shied away from my faith. I've never shied away, even as a teenager, to say that I went to church on a Sunday. It was never ever something that I felt ashamed of. But I have learned that God's always there. He's right beside you, and He gives you the guidance and the wisdom that you need at times. So if you come alongside people, He gives you the right words to say, or even just listening ears that they maybe need. So in a personal way, I have learnt a lot about myself. Well, my hopes for the future is that the Lord continues to use me how He's using me just now, and I just would like to be used to reach out to others. I love meeting folk. I love a people person. I love meeting up with folk for my coffee, or going out for lunch, or out for supper, or anything to do with food, or anything to do with coffee. I'm there. And I love coming alongside people, and as I said earlier, even just to listen to people. It doesn't have to be you telling them what they need to do. Just being a listening ear is what people needs sometimes. But that, let me read this verse for you as well, because sometimes we get caught up on how the phone's not working, how others react to you. And sometimes we need to always just look at what God thinks on us. It doesn't matter, people's opinions don't really matter. It's what you do and how God is with you. So Romans 12:2 says, don't copy the behaviour and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. So the only opinion that matters is God's. But you do need to watch how you live your life. You need to be very mindful of how we react and respond to things, don't we? But my hope is that I never ever be conformed to the things of the world, but I'm transformed by the renewing of the Lord, and that He uses me in a great way.
I'm Ian. I'm from Inverallie. I'm married to Rosalind. We have 4, I was going to say wonderful children, but maybe the other's wonderful. No, we've got 4 kids, and we've got a grandchild, Isla. Lived in Fraserburgh since we got married. Brought up in the church. Pretty much since day one, been in church. Brought up to go to church. At the time, I was non-negotiable. It was just Sunday came round, we were there, and conventions, different special meetings. We were expected to be and brought along to church. Great childhood, really good childhood. 2 streets for the shore. That was where I spent a lot of time. 2 doors down basically for my grandparents, which was really good. And I was on the right side of the village, so all good. I went to a faith mission camp in Lossiemouth, first camp I'd ever been to, summer camp. I reckon it was about 1980. and I gave my life to the Lord then. It was a leader, and the only name I can remember is Auntie Alice. I'm not sure her second name, but she gave out the appeal one night. I think it was towards the end of the week, and I gave my life to the Lord then. But it's something that we were always. It wasn't something new I learned that week. It was something that had been something I'd known about salvation pretty much all my life. Childhood and youth were pretty good. Halfway through youth, we kind of moved from Inveralchy to Banff, just outside Banff. But before that, in Inveralchy, church, like I said, church was, Sunday was a church day, Sunday school day. Sometimes youth, we would come into youth in Broch. But youth, my youth was good. The highlights of my youth, I would say, was the first week of the summer holidays. From age 11 to 18, I went to the Assemblies of God Scottish Youth Camp in Elgin or Buckie. And I would say that was a highlight of my youth. Got a lot of friends from different areas. Had got a lot of good times there, a lot of good preaching, a lot of good experiences. I mean, there have been struggles, and it's not to say that my Christian faith has been without doubts at times. Like I said, I went to camp. That was my highlight of my year. I'm thinking I must have been about 14. Somewhere near the end of the week, a call to prayer went out for those that wanted guidance and what they wanted to do as a career. And I was coming to that age where I was picking exams, and I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. I went forward. The guest speaker that week was Ray Bevan. Ray Bevan laid his hands on me. When I went back in my seat, I was speaking in tongues, but when I received that, it felt very, very real. But as time went on, for a good lot of time, I had doubts in my mind that if this was something that had been a real experience, because I'd been brought up in a Pentecostal church, messages in tongues were common every week, interpretation, and it was something I'd grown up with, something I'd heard a lot of. And all it was in the back of my mind was, am I mimicking what I've just been brought up with, what I've just heard? And I remember when Pastor John Alsop was here, there was a guy came from Aberdeen. I think I'm not sure if he was a professor, but his name was Danny Gilbert. And we had to do it was in a Saturday night Bible study thing, and we were asked to do a spiritual gifts evaluation form. So you answered questions and you marked them in likely or unlikely, or how likely you were to do something, and it came out with your top 2 gifts. My top 2 gifts were faith and tongues. So that was a Saturday night. Sunday morning, I had never, given it utterance in church. I'd spoken in tongues, but nay, as something to be interpreted. So I was sitting there and I was thinking, well, my top 2 gifts are faith and tongues. I'm going to take a step of faith and I'm going to speak out in tongues. And when I stood up and spoke, something took over. It was not me that was giving that utterance. And that was confirmation to me. I heard later that there was somebody in the church, a lady that didn't usually come to our church, but such was the force of the utterance that she got a real shock, almost a fright, when I started doing it. And the next thing for me there was the interpretation. Is this to be interpreted? Is somebody going to recognise this? Is the Holy Spirit going to speak to somebody and say, okay, this is what it means? And it was interpreted. And that was a confirmation of faith to me. It kind of eased my doubts.
What have you learned since becoming a Christian?
Lots. I think I learn more and more patience with people, especially the last few years, because I realise how imperfect I am. I think I'm more forgiving than if I previously would have been. I'm less adamant about some kind of things. And I think I've learned in the long run, it took me a good long while to learn, but that God is in control. And we spoke about challenges when we were younger, and even with challenges, everybody goes through challenges. I've often joked that one of my favourite verses is, in this life you will have trouble. I've often been rebuked for finishing that. The rest of the verse says, I have overcome the world. But a verse that brings a lot of comfort to me, especially if in struggles and different times come when you're challenged, is Psalm 27, and it's the last two verses. I remain confident of this, I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart, and wait for the Lord. And that was definitely a hope that my family will choose Jesus. Every one of them is their own faith. We spoke about hopes and fears this year. My fear would be that they didn't see me living out my faith. They say that evangelism is so much percent spoken, so much percent observed, and I would say I would like to think that I'm a good example. I'm a faith.
Okay, so I am Jody. I am married to Gavin. I was born and raised in Gamray. I would say I had a really good upbringing. I think growing up in Gamray, you had quite a sheltered life. Abdi was brought up to going to church. I think Abdi in our class went to church. There certainly wasn't a lot of folk that didn't go. Well, I went to different churches, but I think I was keen that God was there. It was never really a question of whether he was there or not. It was just something that we grew up with. It was just normal. So I loved going to Sunday school. I really loved learning about stories and hearing the songs. And I think, it was definitely very sheltered. I think we didn't really ken a lot about the troubles in the world. And I think that kind of changed when we got to academy. However, I actually gave my life to the Lord when I was really young. Andy Lovell used to come down to Gamray with a tent, and he used to put his tent up at a New Grun, and we used to go to meetings there. And I remember listening to one of his services one day, and I just kened that I needed Jesus in my life. So I bowed behind at the end, and I went up and spoke to him, and he helped me to commit my life to the Lord at that point. So I continued going to Sunday school up until about primary 6 or primary 7, and then I moved on if it was called Bible Club at that time. Bible Club was different. I think, or wasn't the songs, or wasn't the music and stuff the same. And we started reading fae the Bible more, and then having conversations about it. But I think although we was getting into the Bible and starting to learn about it, I really wasn't grasping it. It was just going way over my head. I didn't really understand at that point. And it was just about time to get an academy, so I think I just decided to stop going. And I would say that was when I had kind of started to lose my way a little bit. So just about that time we was going to academy, and I mind one day my chums Elizabeth and Lindsay coming up to me saying that they had been approached by Kieran who asked if we wanted to be in a Christian band for them. Now, this was all new to me. I didn't ken that there was such a thing as Christian worship music at that point. I just kent hymns, so this was all new, and it was exciting, and I would say that that's really when my relationship with the Lord really started. I understood it, I connected with him on a personal level, and I recommitted my life to the Lord then. However, we were just teenagers, and we thought we could do our thing. We kent that the Lord was there, but we also wanted to live life. Now obviously we was going to Banff Academy, so eventually we just fell off of the broch and decided that we was going to go and do our own thing. So we just started going out and partying just because that's what Abdi about us did. That's how we kent. Now, it wasn't a bad time. I really enjoyed my teenage years. I had a lot of chums. We was all really close, and to this day, the chums that I made are still my best chums, and we're all really close. So it wasn't a bad time. However, I did kind of ken that I wasn't living in a way that the Lord probably wanted me to at that time. I got a job in Morrisey Bakers and Gamery, and honestly, that was the best job that you could have asked for. It really was. It was good for the soul. I worked with my chum Elizabeth and Pamela and Jane, and so we went through life together. We would come to each other with our trials and our challenges, and although we didn't really speak about it openly at Abdi, why was kent the Lord was there, and when we would give each other advice, it would always come back to our Christian values. So didn't I get me wrong, I wasn't a perfect Christian at that point. I really wasn't fully living for the Lord, but I always had that reminder, and it was always there. And I would say that they had been a really big influence on my life, and still are to this day. Moving on, in 2010, that was when my mum and dad split up. I was awful fortunate in that it was a good divorce. They always remained amicable, and to this day we really are still an awful strong family unit. However, you didn't get divorced because that happens rosy, do you? And I mind hearing them at nights arguing and stuff like that. And although I wasn't fully in my faith and stuff at that time, I prayed about it because I always kent that the Lord was there when I needed me, and I kent that He wouldn't see me wrong, and that was just what I did. So I continued on through my teenage years. I liked going out at the weekends, making memories with my chums, and then it wasn't probably until about 2014 or 2015 that I really did start to struggle. It just felt like one thing after the other happened that year. The relationship I had been in at the time broke down, and there really was some really big family strains going on at home. But I had decided that I wasn't going to lose my way, and that I was going to start to lean into God more, because I can't that's what I should do. I always had that verse in my head coming up that says, your word is a lamp to my feet and a light for my path, so I needed to pursue this more. So I did. I started studying my Bible again, and I started going to church. I wasn't going every week, but I was going regularly enough that I felt like I was back on the right track. Even though everything in the world seemed a bit uncertain about me, I kind of kent that was what I was supposed to do, and I kent that the Lord would help me through it. And again, there was another verse that I kind of clung to, and that was Isaiah 43 verse 2. When you go through deep waters, I will be with you. However, I was this one week, and a few big things had all happened at once. And it came to Friday, and I had just had enough. I just didn't ken fit to deal with myself. And I really didn't ken why, but for some reason I didn't press into God. I was working with my mum at a time, and I really, really loved my job at that time. We had an amazing team. Equines was at ace. I really loved working with them. We had arranged to go down to a training in Lawrencekirk on a Saturday. And looking back, I was really excited about it. My work was the one thing that brought my joy and excitement, and I had been really looking forward to that training, but it had just been a really big week, really quite mentally draining, and on a Friday I was just done. So I had already arranged to go through Aberdeen and bide with Elizabeth, and I knew it was going to be a really good night. We was going to chill, we was going to have a movie, we was going to speak about Ahen, but for some reason we changed our plans and we decided to go eat. So we went out in Aberdeen and I got really far too drunk. I drank an awful lot and we bed out until stupid o'clock. I think we didn't get into the house until about 5:30 in the morning. And I wasn't bothered because I really wanted to shut Ahen off. I just wanted to forget about Ahen. I didn't care if it was going on round about me. I just wanted the world to stop for a minute. So we got into the house at about 5:30 and I'm texting into my group for work saying, oh, that's me, just got home, my morning's going to be fun, ha ha ha. And obviously really lucky that I was working with my mum, because obviously she seen that and she was like, absolutely no chance, you're not coming, that's it. So when I woke up the next morning, I think it had hit my foot down. I had let Abdi down, and I honestly just felt like a biggest failure. I really wanted the world to swallow me up. Elizabeth asked me if it like I was, and I just completely broke down to her. I could hardly get words out of my mouth. And she was amazing with me. She gave me a hug and she says, right, that's it, I'm going to pray over you. And I think that was the first time anybody had ever prayed over me. And it was just exactly what I needed at that time. And I think that just goes to show you that God will always put the right person in the right place at the right time. So when my mum came home to pick me up, I got out into the car expecting her to be raging at me, and she wasn't even mad. I think she kinda had been struggling. And I think she just said something like, look, I'm not mad at you, but you really should have been here. And I mind still being so upset with myself that I've just shouted at her, saying something like, well, you should be mad at me because I've let you down, I've let God down, I'm just a horrible, horrible person. And I think she was really taken aback by that. And she asked me if it was going on, and I broke down to her as well and just told her, it had been on my heart. And all that I mind her saying to me was, you need to come to church more, it'll make you feel better. Now, I really didn't feel worthy at this point. I felt like me going to church, I would have just been being a false Christian. I felt like I couldn't possibly go into God's house, caning that I had done so wrong, and I didn't feel like I deserved to be forgiven at that point. I had let him down and I had let myself down. Here was me supposed to be getting back on track, getting back into the Bible, trying to sort my way through life, and I just wasn't. But anyway, I didn't want to let my mum down again, so I did. I went with her. And again, something that was the best thing I could have done, because God couldn't have spoke any louder or any clearer to me than what he did that day. It was Donald Martin that was preaching at a time, and he spoke about, I'm sure he went on and spoke about how it wasn't the healthy that needs a doctor. He spoke about Jesus' love for sinners, and went into great detail about that and spoke about how he even asked for forgiveness for the folk that was crucifying him. And I just felt like I was the only person in that room. I thought if he can love them unconditionally, even though they have betrayed him as much as that, it was confirmation that it doesn't matter how much mistakes I make, how far I've strayed, as long as I want him back, he's always going to be there for me. He's never going to leave me. He's got me. I've been saved by his perfect grace, and that was just so powerful and so reassuring at that time. When I met Gavin, I really was not wanting a lad in my life at the time. I was happy on my own, I was growing with God, but God had different plans for me. And he brought Gavin into my life and we just grew from there. Now, it's really challenged me at the time, getting out with somebody that wasn't a Christian, because it made me nervous. I was growing with the Lord on a personal level at that point, and I knew exactly what I did want for my future and exactly what I didn't want. And at this point I really didn't ken why it would go, but I always had a peace in my heart, and I always kent I'd had that reassurance and that reminder that God wasn't going to let me go wrong, and it just gave me a peace. So as our relationship went on, a course came up in a church that we went to in Cambridge called Christianity Explored. My mum asked if we wanted to go because her and her now husband Davy was going to go and see how they got on. And to my surprise, Gavin said he would be really interested in going, he would be really keen to learn more. So that was really good, we went, and it ended up being really, really good. We learned a lot, we grew a lot as a couple. We made really strong connections with the folk in the church and just got on off a wheel. And I think even though I had been brought up in church, and even though I had started studying my Bible on my own, it still taught me a lot as well. So after our course finished, we joined the house groups so that we could continue to learn more. After that, we got engaged, and when we did get engaged and decided we was going to get married, we agreed that we needed to be going to church regularly and getting more involved. Again, because we came for what we wanted for our future. So that was good. We started going to church regularly. We was going all the time. We got married, and all was going really well. We was getting on really well with the church, but that was when lockdown happened. We got married in November 2019, and by the March we was on lockdown. And when that happened, Abdi's world just stopped. So this meant something new for church. And I thought, it's going to be really good, we're going to learn and we're going to reach a lot more folk. This is going to be really good. So we would have logged onto Zoom on a Sunday and listened to the services, and it was really good getting to speak to Abdi in that way. And I would say we really did grow in our faith during that time. At some point over one of the lockdowns, I had came across one of the services for the AOG. I couldn't tell you how I came across it or what the service even was, but it spoke to me. And it spoke to me enough that I had to listen to more. So I did, and I felt like every service was speaking to me to an extent. And I got really back into my worship music. I mind standing in my kitchen and just being stopped in my tracks and having goosebumps all over my body. And I just felt the Holy Spirit in my house in a way that I hadn't done before. It was really good. So I just went on and I would listen to the services when I was cleaning or when I was out for a walk. And then I think at that point I realised that Gavin's learning had slowed down a little bit. And I was a little bit worried about it because we weren't going to house groups, and I came up with what made him eager to learn more. And I seen that one of my cousins had shared on Facebook that the AOG was going to be doing an alpha course online. So I thought, well, that'll be a really good way as us getting back into learning again. Maybe we should try it. But I sat on it for really a long time. I didn't want to bring it up to Gavin because I thought there's absolutely no chance in his side of time that Gavin's going to come to a church full of strangers and speak to them. There's just no way he's going to do it. So I kept putting it off, but I kept hearing God saying to me that I had to tell him about it and I had to give him that choice. So I think it was actually the day that the Alpha course started when I eventually said to him, look, I've seen it as has been shared, I think it would be really good, what do you think? And he was like, oh, and I can, let me think about it. And then we was driving home at a time, and I think by the time we got home, it was like, all right, fine, we'll go on and see if it like, and if we didn't like it, we just went on back. So it was good, but I think at that point, I actually grew more nervous than him because I was also thinking, oh mate, far are we going to be speaking to? What are we going to be speaking about? And what happens if it's just really awkward? But Gavin was never bothered about that because he just takes everything like that in his stride. So anyway, we logged on. And the first thing I heard when we logged on was somebody shouting, Jody! And this was Rob Martin. Now, as soon as I looked up and seen him, I felt calm. Rob and Gary had been in our Christianity Explored course. We had went through that with them. They was involved in our house groups and they had already helped us to learn so much. They had been such a big influence in our lives, and Gavin's especially. And I just can't that meant Aham was going to be okay. And that was confirmed further when we got split into groups and they ended up being in our group. Right, so we went on to meet loads of new folk and we got really stuck back into God's word. We got really into worship music again, and especially Gavin, because this was something that was completely new for him at the time. He hadn't really heard a lot of worship music, even though I had kind of told him about it. So we made a worship playlist, and I think that has now been in our house ever since. So once lockdown opened up, we came back to church in person and met Abdi that we had only seen on screen. And it was just so good to see Abdi in person, and it just felt right. And we felt that God was leading us to be a bigger part of this church. Even though all this was going on and I felt my relationship with the Lord growing stronger and stronger, Gavin still was now 100% Airways belief. And as frustrating as that is, unfortunately, no matter what you do, there's absolutely nothing that anybody can say to make somebody get saved. It has to be their own doing, it has to be in their own time, and God has to open their eyes to allow them to see. Now, I didn't think this was going to happen anytime soon. It was going to come. I can't afford we was married that it was going to come. But I really did think it was going to take something big for it to happen. I thought it was going to be some kind of life event. But I was okay with that because I knew that he now had the tools to make that decision when the time came. So in August, when he decided to commit his life to the Lord, I couldn't have been more surprised. It was just the best day. It really was. I was just so grateful. We've continued with our life groups. The original life group that we was in, Betty's Legends, to this day, I don't think there's a single day it's went past that there's no somebody writing in that group encouraging each other. I really do believe that the bonds that have been formed in that group are going to last for life. It's made me realise and understand just how important it is to have that community around about you. I think I've always known that, but it really has just made it really clear to me. Okay, and me and Gavin, we were doing fine. We was doing our own thing, we was learning, we was going to church, but having a community around about you that encourages you and lifts you up daily and prays for you, it just adds a whole other level to your journey, and I couldn't be more thankful that we've got that. Now, do not get me wrong, becoming a Christian is no a ticket to an easy life. I have faced lots of challenges since becoming a Christian, and I'm guaranteed to have more. We're all going to have our troubles and our hurdles that we're going to have to go through, but I really do believe that these are there to build us up and to make us stronger, and we can use these to help others. Having God on our side now, it gives us a peace and a comfort and a hope that we just are not going to be able to get from anywhere else. It doesn't matter. I'm really looking forward to the future now, because I can. It doesn't matter what we go through, what trials we face. We're going to face them together, and we've got a Lord on our side. He's not going anywhere. He's got us, and He is never going to leave us. So, I'll leave you with a verse, and that's from Deuteronomy 31 verse 6. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God is with you. He will never leave you or forsake you.
Well, wasn't that an amazing episode? I was blessed just by filming it. I really hope you enjoyed this. If you want to connect with Jesus and connect with the life of the church, then please get in contact with us. Our contact details are on screen now. Someone is on the other side of that waiting to hear from you. Don't hesitate to get in contact, and someone will be there to walk you through this journey. We have church on Sunday today. We have many things running through the life of the church. You'll find those on social media, but get connected with those, and we'll see you throughout the week. Goodbye.